Welcome to carsales' best small SUV for 2023. Here we have some of the hottest new entrants into this very popular segment, and today I'm going to tell you which one best deserves your money. Before we get into it, please like the video, subscribe to the carsales channel, and give us a comment down below with your pick for the winner. The small SUV segment makes up around 12% of the Aussie car market, and it's growing. In recent months, a number of important new models have been released, and we're going to evaluate them here using the following criteria: safety, technology, comfort and convenience, driving performance, and ownership costs. With one exception, all the cars here are brand new releases. The exception is the Mazda CX-30, which as the second place getter in last year's best small SUV, will act as our existing benchmark. Why are we using second place? Well, the previous generation Kona was the winner, and that's now been replaced. Speaking of, let's take a closer look at our quintet. First up is the shiny new Hyundai Kona Premium N-Line. As the successor to our reigning champion, it has big shoes to fill. Next up is the Mazda CX-30 G25 Astina all-wheel drive, which isn't just our benchmark, but also the biggest seller of these five so far in 2023. Nissan has refreshed its entire SUV lineup in recent months, and the stylish Qashqai TI is hoping to steal some attention. The Subaru Crosstrek S is a new nameplate, but if it looks familiar, that's because it's basically the new XV, offering a similar Impreza on stilts package. What would a group test be without a Toyota? Until recently, the brand has only been represented in the small SUV segment by the quirky CHR. The Corolla Cross gives it a much more conventional competitor. We have the flagship variants of all models, which, to be honest, isn't our preference, but we're limited by what's available from the manufacturers. It does at least give us an opportunity to examine each car in its ultimate form. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm going to run through each car's front seat, back seat, boot, and then take each for a drive. So use the time codes below if you need to skip back and forth. Starting here in the Kona, and being the premium and having the sporting N-Line kit, it's got all the bells and whistles. The latter gives you some dark metal finishes. We've got these red highlights for the air vents and the seat belts, Alcantara for the seats, and there is a stack of gear in here. Obviously the twin widescreen displays, the seats are heated, ventilated and 10-way power adjustable, 8-speaker Bose stereo, heated leather steering wheel with paddle shifters. There's no head-up display, and the sunroof is an extra $1,500, and you could make an argument both should be standard when you're spending 50 grand. Another thing to mention is that if you don't opt for the premium version of the Kona, you do lose quite a lot of good gear. In terms of storage, there's this shelf ahead of the passenger seat, which is always handy, as well as this huge area down here because you can tuck away the cup holders if need be. Now the reason this center console could be dedicated to storage and phone stuff, which I'll get to in a minute, is that Hyundai has moved the gear selector to this wand behind the steering wheel. To be honest, I don't love it because the orientation's backwards for my brain, but I think you do get used to it pretty quickly. In terms of infotainment, there's wireless charging, but not wireless smartphone mirroring, so you've got to plug into the USB-C port to activate that. It does work really well, however, very fast and responsive, nice big icons because it goes full screen. The Hyundai native system is pretty easy to navigate as well. It's also great to have physical HVAC controls, so you don't have to dig through sub-menus to adjust the temperature or fan speed. And the final thing is the new Kona is BlueLink enabled. This is Hyundai's app connectivity that allows you to check whether the car is locked, whether the windows are open, the fuel level, all through a smartphone app. You can also send sat-nav instructions to the car, control the heating or cooling, find your car, always helpful at the airport, and it will alert emergency services automatically in the event of an accident. The best thing about the Mazda CX-30's interior, something it shares with the three on which it's based, is just the material quality in here. Super soft leather surfaces everywhere, the leather itself feels really nice, the way all the dials and knobs click, just feels really well put together. I also love Mazda's instrument dials. They're a fantastic combination of analog and digital. Super clear and easy to read, yet still with that bit of digital configurability. The infotainment isn't so flash. Not only is the screen partially obscured by the shape of the dash if you sit low like me, but there's no touchscreen, so you've got to use this rotary dial. Now for the native Mazda functions, that's not so bad. These shortcut keys around the dial take you quickly where you need to go, and you can navigate the menus pretty easily. But if you switch to CarPlay or smartphone mirroring, then navigating around them is time consuming and frustrating, as it's just not set up for a rotary dial. This flagship Astina is pretty well equipped, as you'd hope, with heated seats and steering wheel, 12-speaker Bose stereo, head-up display, but no wireless charging. Storage is okay. We've got this little tray here, a couple of cup holders and a pretty decent center console, but it doesn't have the same flexibility as the Kona. Now for the Nissan, and in general, pretty good. Lots of contrast stitched leather surfaces, a pair of big screens, which I'll get to in a moment, physical HVAC controls, all within easy reach, and in this top spec TI, not only are these diamond quilted seats heated, they've got a massage function as well, albeit a fairly basic one. Heated steering wheel, head-up display, wireless phone charging and Apple CarPlay, though wired Android Auto. And unlike the Pathfinder we had in our recent Best Family SUV test, which is a much more expensive vehicle, the Qashqai gets this big 12.3-inch screen. It works pretty well, can be a little bit slow to react, but we've got the shortcuts down the side here for various functions, and on the home screen you can also add widgets for frequently used functions. Storage is okay with these couple of cup holders, the wireless charging pad. The center console is quite small and it's so close to having a passenger shelf like the Kona, but not quite. The Subaru is a fair bit cheaper than the other cars here to varying degrees, but you don't seem to miss out on much. We've still got heated electric seats, leather, dual zone climate control, a 10-speaker stereo, a sunroof, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and wireless charging. So it's very well equipped. A couple of things that are missing compared to the other cars here are a head-up display, heated steering wheel and digital instruments, though personally I've got no problem at all with analog dials. Subaru also goes the furthest in moving all the physical controls into the touchscreen, but it strikes a pretty good balance. We've still got hard keys for temperature, demisting and volume, and while the fan controls are in the screen, they're always down here, so you don't have to go searching through various menus to find them. This screen is laid out just like a smartphone, so it's very easy to navigate. You can customize the layout, and the portrait orientation works really well with smartphone mirroring. Storage is very similar to the Qashqai. We've got the cup holders, wireless charging pad. The center console is quite a bit bigger. But overall, I'd say that while the Crosstrek doesn't necessarily feel as premium as some of the others here, nor does it disgrace itself. Finally, we've got the Toyota Corolla Cross, and well, it's fine. Certainly doesn't feel as nice in here as some of the others in terms of styling or materials, which could be a disappointment given this is the most expensive car on test, but equally there's nothing really to complain about. Still got big screens for the infotainment and instruments. I've got wireless smartphone mirroring and charging, heated electric seats, heated steering wheel, 9-speaker stereo, full-length glass roof, so it's got all the toys. Just doesn't really feel like a 50 grand plus proposition in here. Now if you go down a rung to the GXL, you save around $7,000, but Toyota does strip away quite a lot of the good gear. The other thing to do is to stay with this Atmos variant, but go to a 2-wheel drive hybrid, which will save you $3,000, or ditch the hybrid system altogether, which will save you $5.5 grand. Anyway, thankfully Toyota is now rolling out much better infotainment systems across its models, and the Corolla Cross has this 10.5-inch touchscreen, which is pretty easy to navigate your way around and works really well with smartphone mirroring. The Corolla Cross also has app connectivity, and like the Kona, you can view and control certain vehicle functions via your smartphone, and it will also alert emergency services in the event of an incident. Overall, it's a clear win to the Kona here, with the most storage space, excellent connectivity, the BlueLink system and the most equipment. About the only thing it really lacks is wireless smartphone mirroring, which is certainly handy, but not the end of the world. The previous generation Kona might be our reigning small SUV champ, but it also had a fairly major shortcoming, and that's that it was pretty tiny inside. The new Kona is 170mm longer with a 60mm longer wheelbase, and that means usable rear seats. Very usable, in fact. I've got heaps of room for my 180cm frame. The outboard seats are heated and have ISOFIX. I've got air vents and a pair of USB-C ports. As a further test of rear seat space, I'm going to set the front passenger seat of each car to a comfortable position and see if we can fit this baby seat. And as you can see, the Kona passes with flying colours. The CX-30 is a bit more cramped. It's probably okay for smaller adults or older kids, but then they might struggle to see out because of the rising belt line. It's also pretty sparse back here. There's no storage, no USB ports, just a couple of air vents and fold down centre armrest. Furthermore, the CX-30 size means it's a real struggle to fit the baby seat. It can be done, but the front passenger is going to have to sacrifice most of their legroom. The Qashqai is good. Plenty of space. I'd be happy back here even for an extended period of time. There's some nice materials, the same quilted pattern on the seats as the front, and we've got a USB-C and A port for charging. It's an easy pass for the Qashqai in the baby seat test with plenty of room. There's a pretty reasonable amount of space back here in the Crosstrek, and USB-C and A ports for charging, as well as a fold-down centre armrest, but there are no air vents back here. That's a pretty fundamental oversight in a car like this. There is, however, plenty of room in the Subaru for the baby seat to fit easily. In the back of the Corolla Cross, I've got enough space to be comfortable in every direction, as well as a pair of air vents and USB-C ports. But not only do I have cup holders in the fold-down centre armrest, I've also got one in each door, which is arguably a much more sensible place for them. Weirdly, the Corolla Cross fails the baby seat despite appearing to have plenty of space. The problem seems to be the front seats slope back quite heavily, so the front passenger will have to sacrifice. There's a degree of splitting hairs here, as all of these 5 have plenty of airbags, though the older Mazda lacks the front centre airbag of the other 4. Otherwise, all have every possible active safety feature like adaptive cruise, lane assist, cross traffic alert, auto emergency braking, the works. The all-new Kona's greater size also improves its luggage carrying capability. The previous car's 374 litres sounds reasonable, but it was quite a cramped space. Not only does this new model have a bigger area, it's also got this false floor for greater flexibility. Electric tailgate too on this top model. CX-30 does struggle slightly with a smaller space, so if you've got certain things you need to carry, take them with you on the test drive to ensure they fit. Another electric tailgate on this top spec Astina though. At over 400 litres, the Qashqai has a very decent boot, and underneath these 2 floor panels you've got extra storage space, or you could also hide your valuables. Once again, electric tailgate. Here we come to one of the Crosstrek's great shortcomings, and sadly there's a similar story in the old XV. Not only is the boot very small, the floor is extremely high, so this isn't a car for people who need to carry much stuff. It's also the only one without an electric tailgate, so there's a reason for that cheaper price tag. Last but not least is the Corolla Cross, and while its 380 litre volume isn't the biggest number here, it really is a very usable space. Electric tailgate too on this top model. Toyota tends to shine when it comes to running costs, and the Corolla Cross is no exception. Servicing is much less than any other car here, and the hybrid's efficiency advantage means fuel costs are also very sharp. Shout out to the Subaru too for its lower entry price and impressive residuals, but the Qashqai struggles. The TI flagship isn't expensive compared to its rivals like some lower variants, but the need for 95 RON fuel and the extremely expensive servicing handicap it. Okay, so now I'm on the road and starting in the Hyundai, but the Kona almost kills any chance it has at winning this test the moment you start to drive it by having one of the most infuriating features you'll find in any car. If you drift even a fraction over the speed limit, it will just bong incessantly at you. And you might think, well, that's a good safety feature. What's wrong with that? Don't speed. And that would be correct if it got all the speed limits right. But it doesn't. Not even close. I've been driving on a road that's 60, and so far it's thought that the speed limit is 40, 50, 60 and 70. Thankfully, it's not too difficult to turn it off, but you have to do so every time you drive the car. It is maddening. Hyundai, you have to fix this ASAP. While you're at it, you can fix the driver attention warning that again bongs incessantly at you if you go to look at the infotainment or the aircon or in your mirror or at oncoming traffic, and the lane assist, which constantly fights the steering even when you don't need it to. And all this is an even bigger shame because the rest of the Kona driving experience is very, very good. On a day-to-day level, it's very easy to drive. The fact the torque converter automatic replaces the previous dual clutch makes for smoother stop-start progress. The ride is good, no problems whatsoever. This latest Kona hasn't benefited from any local ride and handling tuning, but it's still really good to drive. And if you opt for the 1.6 turbo engine, you kind of get a semi-warm hatch. This engine can be a bit underwhelming in bigger cars like the Sportage and Tucson, but it's still got enough grunt to make the smaller Kona feel pretty feisty. Got all-wheel drive traction, decent steering, though it can get a bit of kickback through mid-corner bumps. Nice balance. It's actually a shame they're not doing a proper N version of this car, so I reckon it would be mega fun. Mazdas tend to be pretty good to drive, and the CX-30 is no exception. Like the 3 on which it's based, you can drive this thing surprisingly hard and it laps it up. Now, I don't mean it's a sports car or anything, but equally if you find yourself on a nice bit of road, you can carry some pace, maybe put it in sport mode and definitely enjoy yourself. It's nice to have a naturally aspirated engine, the gearbox is slick, the steering is nice and accurate. Now the flip side of this is the CX-30 does require a little more effort to drive sort of day to day. The engine doesn't have that big mid-range torque of the Kona, for instance, and the steering is weightier at parking speeds. But if you enjoy driving, you're not at all going to be disappointed with the Mazda. Now for the Qashqai, and it's fine. There's nothing really terrible about it, but the raw specifications kind of tell the story. It's got a very small 1.3 litre engine without much power and a CVT gearbox, which isn't the most inspiring combination. Now it goes along okay because it's got a turbo and the CVT does a reasonable imitation of a regular auto, but you've also just got to use more throttle and that means you use more fuel. The biggest problem with the Qashqai though is ride quality. It actually handles pretty well. Nice steering, plenty of grip, but unlike the Kona, which is also on 19-inch wheels, Nissan's just reactive and jittery and not as smooth as you'd hope in a car like this. It's not bad, just not as good as the Hyundai and Mazda. The Crosstrek is a tale of two halves. I really like the way this thing drives. It's the weight and response of the steering, the security in corners, and the ride quality in particular is excellent. Doesn't matter whether you're just cruising day to day or on a longer drive at higher speeds, it's very nicely judged. Sadly, this only makes the fact that Subaru forgot to fit an engine even more disappointing. Look, if you're just tootling around the suburbs, then the Crosstrek's 2.4 litre is okay. But in any other scenario, it is seriously underwhelming. You might think that I don't care about power or speed or anything like that, and that's fine. I can guarantee you that constantly having to floor the throttle to get up a hill or do an overtake will get very tiresome, and that's without the effect that it has on your fuel consumption. That's a shame, as with the Outback XT's turbo engine, this would be fantastic. But even the standard 2.5 from the regular Outback would be a huge improvement. The Corolla Cross, in hybrid form at least, only brings the Subaru shortcomings into even greater focus. This hybrid drivetrain is strong, it's responsive, and there's the obvious efficiency benefits, especially if you primarily drive around town. Are you going to average 4.4 litres per 100k? Probably not, but 5s and 6s should be easily achievable. I'm currently on 5.7. A bit like the interior, the way the Corolla Cross drives is kind of fine again. It doesn't wow you in any way, but again, there's no real cause for complaints. It's easy to drive, it's relaxing to drive, the ride is very comfortable. There's one thing it lacks, it's any sort of sportiness or enthusiasm, but for a car like this, who really cares? If I had to choose between, say, the Qashqai, which handles really well but has quite a firm ride, or this, which is cushy and comfy, I'm choosing the Toyota. Okay, drum roll, the final ranking from 5th to 1st. But before I get into that, it's worth mentioning that we really only have the category newcomers here. If we had everything, the video would be 4 hours long. For shopping in this segment, it's also worth checking out the Skoda Kamiq, VW T-Roc and GWM Haval Jolyon, depending on what your needs are. Now, the verdict. In 5th place, it's the Nissan Qashqai. Not a bad car by any means, but the engine's pretty underwhelming, the ride can be annoying, and the servicing is way too expensive. Next up, the Subaru Crosstrek. If you don't need a lot of space and can live with the engine, then it does have quite a bit to commend it. But equally, those fundamental flaws mean it can't finish any higher than 4th. The CX-30 drops a spot to 3rd this year, but it still ticks a lot of boxes and remains a great all-rounder. But it's a bit tight on space and is beginning to show its age in certain areas. To be honest, I think the CX-30 sweet spot is probably at the other end of the range rather than with this flagship Astina. The runner-up is the Toyota Corolla Cross. In typical Toyota fashion, it gets a huge amount right, but doesn't really blow you away in any one area. And in this case, I think that's fine. Spacious, cheap to run, relaxing to drive, great family car. Like the CX-30 though, I don't know if this range topper is the pick. Maybe a GXL two-wheel drive hybrid for 10 grand less. And that just leaves the Hyundai Kona. It should probably be no surprise that this year's winner is the new generation of last year's winner. But whereas the previous car was great, but only suitable for certain people thanks to its smaller size, this new model solves that problem completely. There's also a Kona for every need. You can start with the base model for just over 35 grand on road, then either go the premium or the 1.6 turbo N-line depending on your priorities for about 40 grand. Or, like this test car, just have the lot. And remember, there are still hybrid and all-electric versions still to come. So congratulations to carsales' best small SUV for 2023, the Hyundai Kona. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the Car Sales channel, and give us a comment down below with any cars you want to see us review.